So, about archetypes and mythology and things that I've briefly glazed over. I realize that I touched only the surface of those, so I'm going to help you a little bit more instead of and just talk about it instead of just throw you to the wolves and be like, "Hey, these are the archetypes mythology. Research, Google it," and yeah, leaving you on your own doesn't seem a bit fair because ultimately this is a course to teach you about stuff. So, archetypes, what are they? We already glazed over them. So there's many archetypes. There's many from different philosophies, different schools of thought, but they're mostly rooted on psychology. Um, Jungian psychology is the one that I'm most familiar with. There's also Freudian psychology, and I'm sure there's many variants and derivates from those. But essentially, these arcs that in each of us, whether man or woman, there are archetypes of how we feel and navigate into the world. For instance, when we have a king, the king archetype. The king is usually the central archetype that unites all others. He is the soul, the father, the chief, and the chosen leader. He embodies the light of the sun, the sacred mountain, divine law and order. Fertility and strength are his signs, bringing blessings and abundance to the land and his people. He sacrifices individual goals to live a life in service. So the king is benevolent. You can see the king archetype in God, for instance. It's mostly depicted as this benevolent force that gives life to everything and is often depicted as a male. The spin of that is the tyrant and the weakling. The weakling is sort of like the king thrown into such challenge that he cannot find his center within him. He wants others to tell him what to do. He's full of distrust, he fears disloyalty, he sees himself surrounded by enemies. You can already, at least I can already tell that this adds drama to any story. Imagine a king and he has his court of advisors and they all plot to kill him or something like that. It plays to these archetypes. The king will be fine as long as he is united with his mission, his center, whatsoever. But if he's thrown into a story or a movie or a video game where things unravel this way, it's easy to center the story and the king around here. How does this matter for character design? Well, we're doing character design, and most of the times on character design and concept art, we communicate things by visuals. Let's just say, yeah, I had Pinterest here open. Let's open another page. There's that king from Lord of the Rings, what his name is, was basically poisoned. This was this guy for sure. Theoden, when he was cursed, I could easily imagine this guy being the weakling, manifested as the weakling. Well, this guy, after he recovered, is the center. There's variants of the tyrant. I remember in Lord of the Rings there was one king of those lands from Tolkien who almost murdered his son alive during some kind of denial that he was still alive from when they got him out of a battle, something like that. It's basically a tyrant compensating for his insecurity by forcing people into his will that he's meant to protect instead of being open channel for divine creative power. So as you see, people uh, eh, are not just one digit. They go through stuff, and the environment and other people shape that stuff, that narrative, that drama. And I'm trying here is that give you examples of that. And in this very specific instance, it's obvious, it's more obvious what you're going to do because if you had to concept that, well, he's a king. Let's give him a crown. Let's give him maybe a beard. There's like an expensive coat for that time period. But it becomes not so easy if you have a king archetype that's not in the medieval world. So how are we going to do that? You cannot just imagine you have a king archetype of a character in a modern day era. That's just not going to work because you will not walk around it with a crown. So how would that work? Here's a few of those archetypes: the shapeshifter, the trickster, and solo. These are other archetypes that span beyond those that we've seen. That's why I suggest and motivate you to keep researching and finding more about this. You don't need to go into too much in depth and take psychology courses or whatsoever. I mean, you can if you like, but I think just getting a gist of it as an anchor for your creative fundamentals would be nice. So the hero look, you see how they go through an arc of drama and how that shapes them and how they look in relationship to the story. So, for instance, there's no king here because these archetypes are a bit different. But let's say, let's just pull it out of my head. Um, Modern day era, a gangster movie, and for instance, The Godfather. I don't need to make one up. The Godfather would be the king, more or less. He doesn't wear a crown, but he wears upper class garments. He's in power. He's always in check and cares for his people, so to speak. There's a king archetype there. You don't need to be a literal king, as in draw a king, to have a king archetype inside a person. It's more about the behavior of that person. And the behavior of that person is a king, although he doesn't wear a crown or medieval garments. He wears something else that is analogous to that. And that is the very foundational thing that you need to understand as the sole takeaway from this class is that think things of think as things as analogies. If you cannot have a crown or something that obvious, what else can you have that portrays that power of a king? Same for the lover, same for the warrior and the magician. A warrior would be easy for a show like Vikings. You know, you have a beard, some tattoos, some rings, some signs of strength. That's the analogy here. Symbols of strength, symbols of what the warrior is in this description. But if you get it to a modern day area, say gangster movie, the warrior will be different from a medieval period. How different? That's where you go and find archetypes or the symbols for the archetypes that describe that. Basically, what we're doing is communicating a language of symbols, like English, Mandarin, Spanish. It's a language that anyone can decode through looking at the character design. And the symbols you're looking for is how to communicate king in this context, how to communicate strength in this context, so on, so forth, in a way that is relatable to the story and makes people understand. As you see, there's many different archetypes, but they all kind of fall into their spectrum of behavior analysis. There's a few examples here, as you can see. And this is not even fiction. Some of these are like this guy here, could be an everyday man, and like this here, and here's this here. You see, the creator can be someone who practices any type of creativity. The innocent could be an introvert like that. The sage could be just having a beard and some glasses, which often makes people perceive that as intelligence. It's about perception and how people perceive stuff, and how people perceive people. The explorer, throw a backpack and a hat. Those are tools for exploring. This is kind of easy, but it's important to have easy examples so you can understand the complex. So, archetypes. Um, what I'd motivate you to do later is to ideally what you want to do actually is to not look at Pinterest, to not look at reference, to start a mind map and just be like brainstorming on paper. For instance, there's just um, character design of Godfather, whatever, or of gangster leader king. Symbols. It's just a normal mind map that I've shown before in other lessons. Symbols, analogies, fashion design, and then you start listing stuff. Gangster leader, gangster king, symbols. What can symbolize that? Oh, upper class clothes. Upper class clothes. Okay, what is that? Um, Symbolizing prestige. What could that be? Um, Maybe as a red flower is sweet. It could be a focal point, artistically speaking, in an art direction way, and it could also be a symbol of his status. So what we really want to symbolize here is status. And then we get another symbol. How do we symbolize status? Maybe we dress in black. It's often symboling elegance. How else can it symbolize status? Well, silver jewelry like rings and watch. And the deeper you go with this, the more likely you're finding something of value. Imagine this is a cave and you're mining with a pickaxe and you're trying to find gold. The deeper you go, the more gold you find until you find, like, okay, yeah, these are enough ideas. And you're really just looking for quantity over quality here. Once you have this sorted out, you can look at reference on Pinterest, Google, whatsoever. Let's say king. It's going to be looking really obvious here. Yeah, king. Crown, things like that. What if we change things a bit? Leader. Okay. And here could be a reference. If your character of a leader is kind of like um, within this ethnicity, well, then Dr. King here could be something for like the anatomy of the face, make him kind of close to that, but not too obvious, you know? So people could get the same perception that they get from this. It's a pop culture symbol at this point. A beard. Yeah, these are different kind of leaders. If your leader is on the evil side, maybe Lenin here, could be an hairstyle that would be relatable. Imagine that you have a different face but the same hairstyle and beard. Now you're getting somewhere. It's really about using the reference rather than the reference using you. You don't just want to slap any reference there. How about instead of leader? It's sometimes I get a dictionary with synonyms to probe further, but let's not do that at this point. But if you want to, there's the thesaurus that I usually use. Let's say king. Emperor, monarch, sultan, baron, kaiser, tsar. See, majesty. That could be something that I could use for research. President. Let's say captain. There we go. Would it make sense for our character to look like this? A little bit. It depends on the story. Would it? Or would it not? Or more like this? I more like this. I like the symbol of like it's almost like a faction that is leading. So you see, there are here different kinds of king archetypes in different contexts with different strengths and weaknesses. This could be more also fitting the explorer archetype as a pirate. So you see, it's not about being a literal king or literal magician or warrior. It's not about using these archetypes and forcing them into your brief. It's using them to make things easy for you to find. So I hope this was helpful and see you on the next lesson.